So today we have um, Pentecost, and during this time that we have here, there is a lot that is presented in our scriptures that we just have to look at because there is so much for us to grab from this. Pentecost actually means 50, and 50 is 50 was there to set everything back to who and everything is. So the word, that's what the number 50 is significant. It's significant of everything returning to its rightful owner. Okay, so if someone got, a young lady had gotten taken by some guy, whatever, because he seduced her, whatever, and took her, he was supposed to pay 50 shekels to the dad, and the dad then was able to, then that would be symbolic of her returning to her dad's home, and then he could give her or not give her. Okay, so this is what the 50 is all about. But 50 has different. The 50 days have different things within it. It has a 40-day period. Of course, you have a 7-day period, and of course, we have a 3-day period that we have to make up all the whole 50. Today, what I would like to do is to go into the feast days, or Leviticus 23, that talks about the feasts that we have, and then we're going to go to Pentecost in that particular scripture. So in Leviticus 23, we're going to look at verse 15, okay? And we're going to read down a little bit. So it says, now, this is after the first holy day Sabbath. So of course you have the Passover, and we had that. And the day after the first holy day Sabbath, okay, of the feast of that feast of Passover and feast of unleavened bread, it says here, and you shall count for yourselves from the day after the first holy day Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 full weeks shall be counted. Or 7 full weeks is a completion of a certain space of time. But then he wants us to move a little further. It says, count off 50 days up to the day after the 7 weeks. Then you shall offer a new grain offering. So this is going to be another offering. Now, the first offering that was put out there, this offering was barley. It was during the time when the barley was out, okay? And so you had this feast of green ears of barley. Well, the second one is not barley. The second one is wheat. And the wheat is the first fruit onto that which, if you will, saved or harvested the wheat. So the wheat is going to be onto that which is considered the barley, which Yahshua is considered the barley, and a new grain offering, okay, is that which comes to be with Messiah, okay? So as we go on here, it tells us, now you shall bring from your habitation. Now we have to know what this is all about, because this is not talking about necessarily you and I. It is talking about you and I, but Moshe set up something that was in heaven. So we got to see this. So it says, you shall count 50 days, okay? Then you shall offer this new grain offering. So it's telling us now, you shall bring from your habitation or your dwelling places. Now, if we're going to bring from our dwelling places, there's something that's we have to bring. So it says 2 waves, or some people said 2 loaves. Now, if you hold your place there in Leviticus, because I just want to go, I'm going to pretty much stay in Leviticus 23 for much of the message, then move on. So here it's telling us to take 2 loaves, okay, or 2 wave loaves. So if you go over to 1 Thessalonians, okay, we're just going to let the scripture interpret the scriptures, so we're going to get an understanding of what is happening here, because the Malachim are the ones who does the harvesting. Okay, so at a certain time, we're talking about the Malachim here. We're not necessarily talking about people. Now, the Malachim are going to use people. The people, when they receive that spirit, they have to do something. Okay, because they also have the spirit of Malachim, or the spirit of those messengers. So they bring forth the very same message. And the messengers, or the Malachim, have received that from other higher Malachim coming all the way down from the, because all this is in the scriptures in the temple. You have 4 that's right outside the most holy place, okay, and those are elementals, those are Malachim, and those 4 over 7 lights. These are also Malachim, and those 7 lights, okay, are also over the showbread. They're also over that. Now, all of these right here are working, and they're Malachim, and they're getting messages from everybody else above them, coming all the way down to us. So there's 2 wave loaves here. And in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, in verse 16, that message comes to the 2 wave loaves. Here goes in 16, it says, for Yahshua himself will descend from heaven with the shout. Now the shout is coming from one of those, is a message coming from the Malachim. Okay? A shout with the voice of the Malach Gadol, and with the trumpet of Yahweh, and the dead in Messiah will be raised first. Well, that's 1 loaf. That's 1 wave loaf. Now, when you wave them, this is waving them so they could be accepted. Okay? So there's some who will be already sleeping, that they were also initiated. And there are those that the apostle said, some of us will still, we will all not sleep, but some will still be around when that time comes. Okay? This is the 2nd loaf. Okay, so it says, then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds. Now, this is not talking about going up in the clouds in the heavens. It's talking about an awakening. Okay, because these guys who have already passed on, they're not dead. Okay, they're not dead. They have moved on into another dimension. Okay, but if you look at your scriptures, it tells you that there's a place, and this particular place have the spirit of just men who have already ascended, and also Malachim. It says, this is the place that you have come to, this place that you have come to. Shaul spoke about that. All those who have died, and they have been initiated into this, they are not in flesh, but they are alive in what you would call Abraham's bosom, which is not exactly that, but we're not going to talk about that today. Plus, those who remain. So you caught up in the air, and this is your awareness and you changing, this was happening. And so we will ever be with Yahshua, or Messiah. So these are 2 wave loaves that we're talking about here. Okay? So now let's go back over to Leviticus 23. Okay? So we're talking about 2 wave loaves there. So it says, bring from your habitation. Now the Malachim, the habitation of the Malachim is the earth. So what they have to bring forth is whatever is on the earth. Okay, and this is when it says, now you have the 4 living creatures and everything is under them. So all the habitation is in those 4 corners, as you will call them. They call the 4 corners of the earth, but it's really talking about those 4 living creatures. because they're in control of everything that the Malachim are doing, and you are simply children of the Most High, and they are servants directing you and I to come out of this pit that we have fallen into and have become prey. So let's hold our place there in 23. Okay, so the habitation we're going to look at. And the habitation pretty much is the whole earth that they're in charge of at this point. And they're directing these youngsters all through that. And the youngsters are obviously us who are fallen. So this habitation now, okay, or this earth, let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 30. And we're going to look at verse 3. Okay, so in here, we're going to see what happens. Abraham was the father, okay, of the Hebrews. Abraham's seed, everything was supposed to come out of Abraham's seed. Remember that. Abraham's seed, however, was scattered into all nations. Because remember, through his seed, all nations will be blessed. So this seed was put into every nation. Of course, they were scattered in there because they didn't do this, they didn't do that, whatever the case, and they were scattered all in there. But that was all part of the plan. You know, it's like a plan A, a plan B. If the nations won't look at them and change, okay, well, I'm going to put, if you're going to do something different than I'm telling you to do so the nations will look at you as an example, then I'm going to have to throw you in there and then call you back out. Okay, in that sense. So here goes now. So in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 3, then Yahweh will bring you back from captivity and have compassion upon you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Well, the nations are in the four winds, the four corners. Let's go over to Isaiah chapter 11. Okay, Isaiah chapter 11. And we're going to look at verse 12. 11 and verse 12. Okay? Okay, so please remember, just hold on in what we're looking at right now so we could follow this train of thought. In verse 12, it says, he will set up an ensnare, a sign or signal, for the nations, and will gather the outcast of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Yada from the four corners of the earth where he has driven them. So he's gathering them back out, okay? Because these are ones who are initiated. So when he's going to get them out, he has to put his spirit out there for them to get a hold of that. And there's a hankering or there's a hunger for that spirit, and this is how he pulls them out, through the spirit that all of a sudden is awakened in those individuals, and they just have a hankering to come out of that. Okay, so now we go to Matthew chapter 3. Let's go over to chapter 3 of Matthew. And so we're looking at this, the four corners of the earth. They're coming from the four corners of the earth, right? But Yahshua was used to bring the spirit in that they would be panting after, okay? Yahshua was used to bring that spirit in, and this spirit is actually, when they become that burnt offering as a sweet smelling aroma, that spirit takes them over. So here goes in chapter 12 of Matthew, chapter 3, and Matthew chapter 3 and verse 12. This is Yachanan speaking of the one who is coming. Of course, the one who is coming is really the spirit that's within that one. Okay, he says, his winnowing shovel is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor and gather his wheat. Okay, well, Yahshua was the barley, but Yahshua came to be an example, okay, that the others would follow. And these others are the wheat that comes at Pentecost. Okay, his wheat into the storehouse, and of course, this is actually where he is, okay, in awareness, in consciousness, but he will burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. Okay, so some is going to be initiated into something greater, and then you have those who are not going to be um, uh, in that space. Now, if you remember a little scripture now, okay, it says that he will send out his Malachim to gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth, from one end of the earth to the ends of heaven. You remember that? This is something that Yahshua was talking about when he said what was going to happen when the Son of Man came. Okay, this is something that he was going to be doing. Okay, now let's go back over to Leviticus chapter 23 now. Okay, so we just saw that. Okay, you shall bring from your habitation. So the Malachim are doing this. Of course, Moshe set something up for them to follow, and what Moshe had them following is bringing these wave loaves and everything, but that's just a pattern of what is above. Okay, so it says right here, made of 2/10 of an ephah. Okay, and this 2/10, 2 is the number is Bayit. Okay, and 10 is actually what you're using while you're here, or the capacity that you have. That when you hear that you have to give everything to your Father, he says you got to give a 10. That's everything that you have here. A 10th is what you have, and a 10th is the richness of your spirit when you're able to give that 10th, because you're going to receive something in return when you're able to let go and give it in that manner. So this 2/10 now of an ephah. When we're able to do that, we find ourselves as witnesses. Witnesses. Bayit is actually 2, and this is a house of witnesses. When you and I are able to let go and let the Creator or let the Spirit in, then that's all we could do. That's all we have. We become witnesses, because that's what we're holding on to right now. We have become that burnt offering that we have put down self, and everything is to the Father. So the only thing you have within yourself now is nothing to witness of your own. You only have what you could witness of the Creator, of the Father. Okay, so there's 2/10 of an ephah, and the ephah is the perfect standard of fine flour. I remember this fine flour, okay? This fine flour is what we wave, okay? This is the government that we talked about, okay? Those who were going to be the wheat that was going to come forth now. So this is it. This is who they are. Okay, so fine flour, they shall be baked with salt. Now, some books may say leaven. Okay, some books may say leaven, but it's not leaven. If you look at Leviticus chapter 2:11, you see that any burnt offering that's going to be with grain can't have a leavening. So they translated it that way, but really it's supposed to be salt. It's not supposed to be leaven. Okay, so now the salt, if you remember, Yahshua said, you are the salt of the world. You go into Matthew 5, he spoke about that. We looked at those scriptures in Matthew 5. And Matthew 5 was telling us about how we should be. Okay, in 5 verse 13, so you're going to be seasoned with salt. These are the ones who are being gathered. Okay. It says, you are the salt of the earth. Malachim have salted you. Okay, has given you a flavor. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no good anymore. So you have received flavor just like you have received light. It's kind of the same thing. Okay? You have light, and what light does, light shows you what's all around. Salt is a preserver. It can preserve you. It can preserve the power, the spirit of the Father in the individual. This is why it has to be seasoned with salt. Okay? And it's a first fruit, so you season with salt. The first fruit to Yahweh. And you shall offer with the bread 7 lambs, and this is complete submission, okay, of the first year without blemish. First year, the first ones to overcome, and in every age there is a first to overcome. So if you overcome in this age, now you are the first fruits unto whatever helps you to come out. However, those who you're going to help to come out in another part of the age, they're going to be first fruits unto you. And if someone else is going to be there, which it doesn't show that's going to be the case, but if someone else was going to be the case, be there, then they would be first fruits to the ones who you help to come out. Okay, so there, it's incremental. Okay, so here we go now. And you shall offer with the bread 7 lambs of the first year without blemish, 1 young bull. We know that young bull, okay, what that is. It's the prince. And 2 rams. These are, once again, the bayit and the rams are a symbol of strength. Okay, so once again, we have that. They shall be burnt offerings, totally given themselves up to Yahweh with their grain offering. And that grain offering is actually those who are going to be the wheat that's going to feed others. Okay, and their drink offerings. And drink offerings is when you and I are poured out. We pour out ourselves into what the Father has given us to do. That's part of what happens here. This is all for Pentecost. This is how the Spirit is received. If we're doing these things, you have it. Okay? Okay, an offering made by fire for a pleasing aroma to Yahweh. Something that is made of fire that is pleasing to our Father. Okay? Now, this fire has a couple of meanings, because the fire is the Spirit. However, when you get the Spirit, a lot of times you're tested by the fire also. Okay? So here goes now. Okay, Leviticus chapter 9. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 9. Okay? In the consecration of the priest, which is in Leviticus chapter 8, all the way through 9, at the end of that consecration of the priest, okay, so Moshe went up to the mountain, Yahshua went to the wilderness, and they came down at the end, and they went through their deal, and they went through their 3 days, and it came to 50. Well, the consecration of the priest is the same thing. And so here we're going to read chapter 9 in verse 22. Okay? It says, then Aaron lifted up his hand. I'm sorry, let's go to 21 first. It says, but the breasts and the right thigh Aaron waved. It's a wave offering in front of Yahweh as Moshe commanded. This wave is waving them to be accepted. It's an initiation. Okay? Okay. Then Aaron lifted his hand towards the people and blessed them. Now remember, Aaron is the high priest. Okay? So Yahshua was going to take the place of Aaron in a new priesthood. A priesthood that's after the order of Melchizedek. This is before the covenant of blood came in, and this was really what you had with the firstborn sons. Okay, and blessed them, and having sacrificed the sin offering, the burnt offering and the peace offering, notice he stepped down. Now, Yahshua did the very same thing. We went through that before, okay? It says he's our sin offering. He showed that he's our burnt offering, and he's our peace offering. And he blessed the people with his life that he was here, while he was here. And the spirit that was within him was there for others to receive, if they believed and followed the instruction that he laid out. Okay, so having done that, notice he stepped down. Well, Yahshua also left this dimension. He got out of here. Now, then Moshe and Aaron, of course, there's a spirit that was in Yahshua. Okay, and Moshe is the oversoul of Aaron, or the overseer of Aaron. Well, there was a spirit that was in Yahshua, which was the oversoul of Yahshua. So here is this very same thing that's happening here, just patterns. Then Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meetings, and of course, you know what's in the tent of meetings. Okay, this is a whole nother dimension, a whole other habitation. Okay, when they came out, they blessed the people. Then the glory of Yahweh appeared to all the people, and fire came out from the presence of Yahweh and consumed the burnt offering. In other words, if you're the burnt offering, the fire from the Creator is going to eat you up. The Father is simply the Spirit. It's going to be eating you up. And the fat on the altar, when all the people saw this, they shouted for joy and fell face down. Now, let's go over to Acts chapter 2. Okay? This is not going to be long. Acts chapter 2. And we're going to look at the very same thing that was happening, but it's not symbolic as what we saw there in Leviticus. Okay? It's not as symbolic as what we saw in Leviticus. Because in Leviticus, it's telling us that there's some offerings, some animals that are out there, but these animals are symbolic of you and I. Okay? Or those who are going to be following. That's what these animals are symbolic of. And it's showing that now when you kill these animals, which is you and I killing the ego, okay? Or if it's not necessarily killing it because you don't want to lose it, but you want to cause it to be transformed into that which will fit into the higher nature. So you're putting it to death in that manner, and you're giving it new life. Okay, so it's death in one sense, it's a rebirth in another sense. Okay, a rebirth of the ego, because the ego was already like that before we fell. So it's a rebirth. It's being born again for the ego. Okay, so we have born again in that sense, but there's another born again which is being born outside of the physical body. Okay, so here we have in Acts chapter 2, and let's look in verse 1. It says, now when the day of Pentecost had fully come, this is the important part that we got to see. They were with one accord. This is very important. There's a reason why Yahweh says in the scriptures, Yahweh is your Father, Yahweh is one. You and I will not be able to function in the level as first fruit unto Yahweh unless we could function as a unit. If we're going to be together, we have to function as a unit. And there are different units all over the place, but they also have to function as units. Because when everybody's gathered in, everyone has to come together and function in the oneness of that Creator. So they were in one accord. The apostles were in one accord, okay, functioning just as Yahweh. So he says the apostles were one. Yahweh's one. On that day when Pentecost had fully come. And it says they were united in one place. They were in one mind. One place, but they were united in mind. And notice here, and suddenly there came a sound from heaven. Think back to Leviticus 9, okay, and chapter 9, verses 22 to verses 24. Suddenly there came a sound from heaven, just as a violent wind. The four winds, these are the spirits, Yahweh, okay, Malachim, that are set in charge to do something. So it's like a violent wind. We had that experience around here before, on the day of Pentecost, okay? Okay, so here goes now. This violent wind being carried, and it filled all the house where they were sitting, and where they were sitting in that one place, they were all in one accord. Where you are gathered together in one accord, there you have the Spirit of Yahweh. If we're doing the right things, the Father is in the midst. Okay, so that's why it says, when two or three are gathered together in my name, doing those things, there I am in the midst. But here's something happening here. Okay. And they perceived that languages were being distributed, just as lightning. Lightning, what is lightning? Lightning is fire. Remember in Leviticus 9, it says fire came from the presence of Yahweh, came from heaven. Yahweh, heaven, came down, and it consumed the burnt offering. The burnt offering are those who are able to put down self. It allows self to move into the higher self, okay, to become in union. So this is when we actually realize Pentecost, the pouring out of a particular spirit, which is the Father's Spirit. Okay, this is so much to speak about. It could not possibly happen on just this day, okay, because there's so much more in here. Okay, so they perceived that languages were being distributed, just as lightning settling on each one of them. Light. They were waking up. The Spirit was there, and all of a sudden there was a change in those individuals, and they were receiving revelation. They were receiving revelation. You may call it downloading. They may call it today in the computer terms. They were receiving something from above. When they were all filled with the Holy Spirit, okay, which is actually what came down, this fire, okay, but they heard like it was a rushing wind, as something being carried, but this is actually something that they were being possessed by. Okay, so they were all filled with this Holy Spirit, and they began to speak with other languages as the Spirit gave them utterance, or gave them the ability to speak. Now, they weren't necessarily speaking any other language than their language, but because the Spirit was there, the Spirit was allowing them to speak in their language, but allowing everyone who was there to hear in their own tongues. This is actually what was happening. So this is something that we see, or in the scriptures, that was taking place during this time. And if you go all through there, you see that during the day of Pentecost, Kepha got up and started speaking to other people, okay, these other individuals, and telling them that this is what had been promised to happen from long ago. Okay, so now let's go to Job. Let's go to Job, the book of Job. Okay. Yael Okay, the book of Joel. In the book of Joel, there is a lot that's spoken of concerning the day of Yahweh. Okay? It speaks of the day of Yahweh and certain things happening during that time. Okay. Joel chapter 2 and verse 28. Okay, so now listen to this now. It says, and it will come to pass afterwards, I will pour out my spirit, see this, upon all flesh. Well, before he pours it out on all flesh, he's going to pour it out on the barley, which was Yahshua. Then it's going to happen on Pentecost, be poured out upon those who are those chosen, or those who have been waved. Okay? Because they're first fruits unto Messiah. Okay. Then they're going to become the individuals who are going to be letting the message out. And so when they're able to do that, then the same spirit that was upon Yahshua, which was now lighted upon them, because they have now become the light of the world, or the salt of the world. Now they have to do the very same thing that Yahshua did with the same spirit that was within him. And greater things they're going to do because there's so much more of them. And they are going to give that spirit to the people. And when they do, it will be all people, because the elects would have already been selected. Okay? The elects would have already been selected. So now the elects have become the leaves of the tree that's going to heal the nation. Well, what would they heal them with? They heal them with the Spirit of Yahweh. In verse 28, it will come to pass, afterwards I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. And also upon the servants, upon the handmaid, and in those days I will pour out my Spirit. Because in those days, the Spirit is being poured out. This is not just being poured out upon the elects, because it's being poured out through the elects. It's being poured out through those who were initiated, the wave offering, the ones who were the dead, and those who were alive still, the two wave loaves. They have a job. And that job is to receive that same Spirit that is symbolic of Pentecost, because all Pentecost is, all 50 is them having the ability and the opportunity to return to their Father, who they came from. When they return to their Father, who they came from, what do they have? They also is going to receive the reward, the inheritance that the Father gives to children. That inheritance is Yahweh, the name. That's the name that's given. I give you a name that's equal to sons and daughters, or greater than sons and daughters, whatever you want to call it. But if that name is there, the Spirit is also there. It's an awakening. And so with that awakening, now there's a job. Because when you came into this earth in the first place, and we all fell, if you will, we all fell. When that happened, we fell, if you will, from what we originally had. So we kind of got disconnected. Now is our opportunity to become reconnected. And the way that we become reconnected is to give that sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offering that's required for the day of Pentecost. Okay? With all those other prescribed things that we saw there in Leviticus. When we looked in Leviticus earlier, With all those that we saw there, if we're able to bring those forward that we saw in Leviticus 23, and not just look at it as animals, but look at it as us and what the Malachim has for us, if we do certain things, if we could see it in that manner, then we're able to see what Pentecost is really and truly about. Because this is when we return to our Father, and if we return to our Father, we return with the Spirit.